Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to kick off, we're going to be posting a few videos this week. I wanted to kick off with the Tamron 20 to 40. This is a long-term test. Damn, that sounded real Long Island, real New York. All right, this is a long-term test of the 20 to 40 from Tamron 2.8. This is a lens that they sent us over about, I would say, it's been about 2 or 3 months at this point. And I wanted to give it a little bit of time so I can actually put it through its paces. I don't like posting video reviews. I don't like posting gear reviews right after I get the equipment because I don't feel like that's a fair assessment of what the gear can do, and that's not a fair assessment that I can give you guys. So this is after about 3 months of testing out through weddings, engagements, a little bit of travel with it. I didn't do as much landscape with it as I wish I would have because the last few months have been very busy. Also why we haven't been posting as much on this channel. But I wanted to share with you at least a few images that we've taken with it and our experience with it. As some of you know, if you follow this channel, we're not super duper nerdy and techie, so I'm not going to be giving you guys a ton of information that you can find on the pamphlet. If you want to read it, you can go right ahead. Send me a message, I'll send you the PDF. But I'm going to go into more how it feels like to use this in a real world situation. So when Tamron first sent this lens over to us, they sent it because I wanted to take it out to Yosemite. We were going to be shooting a proposal there, and the 20 to 40 wasn't going to be the lens for the proposal itself. What I wanted to use it for more than anything was for vlogging, behind the scenes, and things like that. I took my friend Scott Stockton out to shoot the proposal with me. He actually flew from North Carolina to take a little trip. And although I wanted to use it for vlogging, and that's really what I wanted to use it for, the unfortunate part is that with the Sony A9 that I have at the moment, the flip screen only comes out this way. So if you're trying to vlog, you want the flippy screen to go the other way so you can see what you're recording. That being said, I'm sure the next iteration of the A9 is going to have that, and I'm really looking forward to using it for that purpose because in my opinion, I think that the 20 to 40, that is its sweet spot. I think that that's what the demographic would dictate, and I'll explain a few reasons why. If you're going to be vlogging, the last thing that you want to do is have something that is, for example, the 14 to 24 from Sigma. The reason for that, and this is a great lens, so don't get me wrong, but the reason for that is that it's super wide. It's wider than you need for vlogging. I think it's a little too extreme and it's gonna distort a lot of the corners. It's gonna distort a lot of what you're shooting. And secondly, this lens is a lot heavier. It's definitely a lot heavier than the 20 to 40. Even in a size comparison, I'm gonna go ahead and remove from the body. Oh no, all the dust is going in. So you can see the difference between the two lenses. So if you're gonna be carrying this around or carrying this around for vlogging, I would much rather do this one, along with the fact that it doesn't distort as much. Is it going to distort? Of course it will. It's a super wide angle. It's not, you know, a 35 mil or even a 35 mil is going to distort. So yes, at 20 you're going to see some distortion, but it's not going to be a tremendous amount where it ruins the shot, let's say. Now on the way to Yosemite, as you're seeing in this photo, we pulled over and took a few photos of Scott because, you know, he wanted it for his fans. And then after that, there's a photo of the couple that we took with a little bit of off-camera lighting, of course, as you can see there, because they're popping out of the frame, and we were exposing for the background and then giving them a little bit of flash. But as you can see, the distortion is very minimal. Now, is there a little bit of distortion in it? Yes, there is, but it's not something where it jumps at you and they look uncomfortably stretched out. So that's a really good example of using this lens as almost a portrait lens, but an environmental portrait lens. So being able to get all the surroundings and being able to get your couple where they still stand out. They're not lost in the frame. And yeah, some of it has to do with lighting, but I wanted to show that example. So I would say, and I wrote down a list, some of the pros, definitely the weight, the size, it's smaller than comparable lenses. Another thing is sharpness. I'm not going to go into like I'm not going to go into dissecting little sharpness over here in the corner and all this. I'm telling you, as a real world photographer, we shoot, since the last time I posted this video, we probably shot a good 20 to 25 weddings and then probably another 50 different other shoots. So we use our equipment a lot. And going off of that, the sharpness on this has never left me wanting more. I've never shot with it and gone, wow, that was soft. It's definitely never been a thought in my mind. And that's what you want. You want your equipment, when you use it, you don't want to have to think about it. You don't want to have to, like, for example, with some cheaper prime lenses, when you shoot into a very bright background, you're going to have to be careful about chromatic aberration, you know, all that stuff. I don't want to have to think. When I'm shooting, I want my images to be just there, sharp, and I don't have to think, what do I have to do in post to fix this? You know what I mean? So I haven't noticed anything as far as the sharpness where there's any soft corners or anything like that. Everything has been extremely, and I shoot a lot of the times at 2.8 when it's natural light, and then when it's off-camera lighting, I'll shoot at higher f-stops, and I haven't seen any issues. So that's my take as far as the sharpness on this lens. Now, one can make an argument that why not get a 28 to 75 or a 24 to 70 over something like this? Here's the thing. You certainly can, and I can see the argument for those. But like I said, the weight is going to be a little bit heavier if you get one of those. Two, I've never really cared for focal lengths between 50 and 75 or 50 and 70. It's not something that I miss. You know what I mean? So to me, if I can get a little extra width on the back end at 20, I would rather take that and sacrifice a little bit on the longer end, because on the longer end, I'm going to be using the 35 to 150 anyway. So the 20 to 40 gives me that wide angle look without feeling like I'm missing something on the long end. And if you have your camera control set where you can go into crop mode, which is what I do, if I press C2, it's basically going to give me from 20 until 60, because 1.5 crop, at 2.8. So essentially I'm getting a 20 to 60 instead of a 24 to 70. So like I said, from 50 to 70, I don't really miss that focal length, so it's not anything that I'm really concerned with, because 50 to 70 seems rather boring as far as what it is. If I want a telephoto, I'm going to go 150, 200 if you have the 70 to 200. If I want wide, I want real wide. 28 doesn't really do it for me. It's not wide enough. So this is definitely a nice, let's say, reception lens. And that's something that I really wanted to touch on. Is one of the things that surprised me. When I first got this lens, I wasn't too sold on it, if I'm being completely honest, because I'm going, where does this fit in with all the other equipment that we have, with all the other equipment that's out there? But the surprising thing that I really, really like is during the reception is being able to shoot dance floor with this lens. Sometimes 14, if you don't know what you're doing, it's gonna be too wide. You don't know where you're supposed to be looking because there's so much going on in the frame. With the 20 to 40, you're getting a little bit of a wide angle, but it's not so wide where everything gets lost. So that's been a real nice surprise for me. Mainly also is the fact that it's a lot lighter. And I know in the past I've said, hey, listen, if it's a little heavy, do a few more curls and you'll be all right. And yes, I stand by that. But if I've been shooting for 8 hours already or 10 hours or whatever the case may be, and now we're shooting dance floor, I would much rather have a lens that I can toss around and it's a lot easier to move around than something that's a little bit heavier. So I would rather use something that's extremely light and versatile. I've noticed I've gotten into the action a little bit more because it does feel a little bit easier to move in and out with it. So I do genuinely enjoy the lightness of it for reception. And a couple of little tidbits, little nerdy things. Like I said, I don't geek out too much, but it's good to know. It's weather sealed. So I have taken it to the desert. I've taken it, it doesn't rain here in Southern California, so I haven't really dealt with that too much. But as far as moisture, anything like that, it is weather sealed. So that's something that is a big plus. Another thing is that it has the USB-C connector. So if there's an update or, anything that needs to be adjusted, you do have that option. It doesn't have any autofocus buttons. It doesn't have any manual aperture ring. It doesn't have any of those things. So that's something to keep in mind if that's important to you. But it's just a very simple design, simple lens, no buttons. Like I said, it's just a manual focus ring in the front and then the zoom in the back closest to the camera, which that makes sense. I forget what lens has it further away, and I think it's the most ridiculous thing. But anyway, I digress. So a couple of things that I did notice, and you'll notice if you get this lens, is if you have the 35 to 150, for example, the zoom, it goes the opposite way, which sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, it does annoy me when I'm shooting on the dance floor and I'm going, oh wait, which direction? And I have to remember. I understand I'm only shooting with two lenses, so I shouldn't be this dumb. But sometimes with muscle memory, shooting 80, 90% of the day with one lens, it throws you off a little bit. So that's the only thing that I was a little confused by, why it goes this way when the 35 to 150 goes the other way. So I wanted to mention. And as far as build quality, it seems really good. The fact that it's really light compared to other lenses, that's the only thing where I have to see long term. In a couple of years, I'll post another video and see how it's doing. Just because sometimes, when you feel heft, you think, okay, that might be a little bit better built. But that doesn't necessarily mean that. So we're going to test it out. We're going to put it through its paces. And in a couple of years, I'll post an update video as far as the quality of how it's doing. So far, no issues, but again, I've only owned it for a few months. And one thing that I did want to mention is doing a little bit of research on this lens is that some people were mentioning that the balance does go off slightly when you zoom in or zoom out if you're on a gimbal. I'm not a videographer, so it's not anything that I experienced, obviously, but it's something that I wanted to mention to you guys so you have the appropriate information. Another thing that some YouTubers were mentioning is as far as flare goes with this lens, I haven't experienced anything negative when it comes to flare. I personally, if I'm using it for a stylized shot, I don't mind flare, but I also always leave my lens hood on, which is one thing that a few people were mentioning that they shot with it off, which I think is, I don't know, to me it's silly. Like, I've broken lens hoods before, right? I've broken the 85, no, I've broken a few lens hoods from the 24 to 70, and I dented the heck out of the 85 back when I was on Nikon and it was a metal one. I banged it so hard onto a metal door in New York, and the lens hood bent a little bit, but the lens didn't break. So to me, ever since then, I've always left my lens hood on no matter where I am. So as far as flare, I'm sure that plays into it, why I haven't seen too much of it, because I always have it on. And safety tip, if you're shooting with any lens, leave the lens hood on. You look like a photographer, that's, you know, wonderful, but more so, it just protects your lens. So I always recommend leaving the lens hood on. And I did want to mention, since I have mentioned weight quite a bit, it's 365 grams, which is what I found out. And the ring for filters is a 67 millimeter ring. So just wanted to mention those last two things before I give you my final verdict about this lens. All right, so how would I explain this lens to somebody that's getting into photography if I were to recommend this lens and something else? Because obviously this can't be your only lens unless you're using it more for like a hobby, for traveling. I mean, that I'm really excited to use this as a street photography lens in New York, because in the fall when I go out there, because it's small enough where it doesn't seem so professional. I'll probably end up even taking this little trigger off. So it's a little more incognito, which I like. So if I were to recommend a lens combination to somebody, I would say this one would definitely be up there, because it's giving you a wide angle without being so wide that if you don't understand what distortion does, it's not gonna mess you up too much. Because if I tell somebody to get the 14 to 24, they're gonna be giving me melon heads back on people, because they're not going to understand that at 14, if you're pretty close to someone, they're going to look really funky. 20 is a little bit more forgivable. So it's an easier lens to give somebody that's starting out. Pair that with the 35 to 150, and basically you have 20 to 150 or 225 if you go into crop mode with just two lenses, which you can cover an entire day, an entire wedding day with just that combination. And actually, Scott Stockton, who I mentioned in the beginning, he just posted a video that I'm going to link below where he shot an entire wedding, 99% of it with that combination. I think he used a 50 1.4 or 1.2 for a few other things, but mainly it was a 20 to 40 and a 35 to 150 for an entire wedding. And I can tell you easily, because I have done it, you can definitely do it with that combination. And I guess I should have started with this, because money makes the world go round, right? So how much is it? This is and I'm looking over here because I wrote down some notes. So $699 for this lens. The Tamron 28 to 75 is $799. So that one, again, it doesn't give you as much width, but it gives you a little bit more length. So that's an option that you could consider. The Sigma 14 to 24, which is this one, is, my math is not great, but it's almost double the price. It's $1,300. So it is a little bit more expensive. And then there's the Sony 16 to 35 f4, which is $1,100. But f4, if I'm being honest, I bought one f4 lens in my life and I returned it. I know I sound like a snob saying that, but honestly, once you've shot with a 2.8 lens and you're shooting an event and you know what that's supposed to look like, going backwards to f4 just doesn't feel right. You know what it's supposed to look like, and because of that, I couldn't justify keeping it. I had to go back and I ended up picking up something else. And then same thing with that. So Sony also just came out with a 20 to 70 f4. Again, it's $1,100, but it is f4, and I can't justify buying an f4 lens for what I just mentioned. And like I said before, if I'm looking from 50 to 70, I'm not missing that focal length anyway. So to me, this is just, it hit a really sweet spot with the price and the length that it's giving you, the focal length. And like I said, if you're on a full frame camera, have that crop mode button ready and you give yourself a a little extra reach. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Please let me know if you guys have any questions on this lens. What's your experience with it? If you've played with it, if you've tried it, if you're on the fence about buying it, leave me a question below. I'm always happy to respond. As long as you guys are respectful, you know I'm always happy to give you guys even more information. All right, guys, that does it for now. Stay tuned. We have a couple more videos that we're posting this week, but thank you so much for watching, and let us know if there's anything else that you guys want to watch. I'm always happy to film whatever there is demand for. Thank you, guys.